Chris, I'm so excited you're here because anyone who can be introduced as the anti-financial advisor is cool by my book.
You got to be a little bit. I mean, a little slap in the face of financial advisors is a little bit fun, right?
And I should rip on him too because, by the way, I am one. My wife owns a broker dealer, and we deal with a lot of them. But at the same time, we're open architecture. You don't have to invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. You can invest in real estate many times, depending on
Right.
the circumstance. We think that makes more sense. But anyway, I digress. Chris, how about this? I love throwing people feet to the fire. Give us one suggestion, one tip that would help. Let's say a solopreneur or entrepreneur who wants to get rich. Give us one tip right off the bat.
Profit first, man. Like, I know you probably hear it from guys from time to time, but it's always profit, right? I mean, it's always about how much money do you actually have left over after all is said and done. One of the biggest problems with entrepreneurs is that the majority of entrepreneurs are actually proven to be spenders. And that's why they became entrepreneurs, right? Because they really realize, like, listen, like, I want to be able to make as much money as I can because I want to be able to spend the way I can. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with spending. Trust me, like, spending and enjoying life is great. But I just teach that you need to be a wise steward. It's not about being a penny pinching, miserly, crappy saver. It's also not about being an irresponsible spender. It's about being right in the middle, which is a steward. Steward says, I'm willing to use money, but I want to use money in a way that it comes back to generate more money and to magnify and amplify and bless more lives. And that's what a steward does. And that's how anybody, if you, the best way to create more wealth is to figure out how to become a wiser steward.
Look at you. That sounds kind of cool. I like that. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Why is it that you're here hanging out with us? Because you got to be cool to be hanging out with us.
Well, like you said, you have a name like an anti-financial advisor. You got to be kind of a little bit cool, right?
Hmm.
But I didn't start that way. I actually started out in my professional career as an entrepreneur. I actually started out as a financial advisor. I did it because I was hoping that I would give my dad some of his life back because he was that hardworking guy. He was like traveling around and doing stuff, trying to take care of us kids. And, he always taught us like your word is your bond, that kind of stuff and work hard. But the problem was that he would also say things like, we don't have enough money. We can't afford this. What do you think I am? Made of money? When money doesn't grow on trees, that kind of stuff you hear growing up. And he would even tell me, he's like, Chris, I think my job will literally kill me. And by his 40s, he already had strokes. 50s, he already had heart attacks. Even to this day, he actually just celebrated his 80th birthday last month. And the guy like is a walking miracle. He's had 12 stents put in his arteries. He's
Dude.
seriously like the bionic man, right? And so, like I didn't want to live the life like he was living. And I also wanted to see if I can give him some of his life back. So that's why I became a financial advisor.
Mm.
Well, 4 years into it, I started really enjoying being my own boss and as an entrepreneur. And, 4 years in, he said, well, Chris, why don't you advise me? So I sat down with him, looked at all of his numbers. And I said, Dad, I'll be honest. You're 61 years old. And even though you paid off all your debt, including your house in 18 years, and you've been stuffing money in your 401k for the last few decades in the traditional mutual funds, thanks to things like Y2K and whatnot, you're now, if you want to retire today, you better hope you die in 5 years because that's when you're going to run out of money.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the guy was the penny pinching saver, right? So he's the guy who was like Dave Ramsey's older brother that Dave Ramsey looked up to. And yet my dad still couldn't retire. And that bothered me. And of course, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. One of my friends that I trained to be a financial advisor, I went to call him up to see how he was doing. He's like, man, my life is awesome. My dad and I have partnered on some deals, and my dad's now double his income as a professor at the local university.
Mm.
I said, well, come on, that's too good to be true. That was just 4 or 5 months ago you started doing that. He's like, is it too good to be true? And then he really challenged me. He's like, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free where they don't worry about money? None. How about this? How many of you as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but actually doing these investments? And when I knew there was guys working there since the late 1970s and they couldn't retire either, I knew there was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I quit, vowed never to go back, started learning about real estate investing and passive income and how it's not about accumulating all your money. It's about getting your money to pay you. And later that next year, I was actually able to retire when I was 28 years old, right before right before the Great Recession hit, which was awesome. Awesome timing, right? So actually, that's why when people say, how'd you retire twice? Easy. I screwed up the first time. I was able to retire with my real estate in 2007 or 2006. I came out of retirement in 2007, teach people how to get out of the rat race. And then the recession hit me hard to the point where I almost went bankrupt. I was over $1 million in debt.
Holy.
I was able to pay it all back, but it took me another decade to do that. So it's about end of 2016, I was able to retire the second time when I was 39 years old. And
Hmm.
and that's kind of what I teach people today. Is I teach people how to create passive income, how to actually get out of the rat race, like legitimately get out of the rat race with passive investments versus active ones. Then we even do like infinite banking and things like that, like how to use it as like this tax-free supercharged savings account to get your money to pay you twice.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good background. You sound like me. I mean, I was basically semi-retired. I would only work maybe 5 hours a week
Hmm.
for about 10 years. And then now, because of all the cool stuff that's coming out as far as AI, I'm like back in it. I'm loving it, especially what's coming out with quantum computing. But all right, so you mentioned something kind of cool. I think not enough of our audience, and when I say our, by the way, that's vastsolutionsgroup.com. So I should probably throw that out. By the way, again, my name's Ken, a friend. Our audience doesn't know enough about infinite banking. So let's chat about that. I think a lot of people should at least know about it. It's an alternative that people should know about, especially in our world in the investments field. So why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit about what that is and the basics, and then we'll kind of take a couple of steps further along the spectrum.
Yeah, there's a lot of people teaching about it nowadays, right? Especially in the real estate space. Unfortunately, half of it's crap some of the time, you know. Here's how I see it, and this is from a more of an investor perspective. Most guys will teach you this from an insurance agent perspective. They always teach you like it's some like supplemental retirement account because you're using whole life insurance, which is like the most boring thing you could possibly put money into, right? You're using that to save up money and then live on a retirement. Or what you hear people with infinite banking, they'll teach you, oh, you use this like a checkbook, right? Like you're gonna use to pay all your bills and you'll pay your cars with this and pay yourself back, which is actually a lie. You do not pay yourself back, but they'll
Mm-hmm.
use that kind of phrase and things like that, right? Here's what I know it to be, right? Because I was trained just like a lot of people have heard it online and on social media and whatnot, is that it's really a tax-free supercharged savings account. And if you use it correctly with the right design kind of policy, you can actually use it to generate money twice. You can get your investments to pay you twice. So what do I mean by that? So I'll tell you, like the first time I heard about it, I heard about the whole Nelson Nash, be
Right.
your own banker, the typical, the Bible of it, right? And it's a little bit of an outdated book nowadays. But when I talk about quitting being a financial advisor and going to do real estate, I heard about this for the first time ever then. Never heard about it as a financial advisor. I heard
Hmm.
about it then. And I had a friend that did it, and he was the one that everybody recommended. So I set up a policy. And I remember looking at it because I had an insurance license, right? I was in the marketplace, so to speak. And I said, man, this thing is really expensive. Is there a way we can adjust the numbers and make it cheaper? And he said, no, you can't. Because if you do, you'll get taxed. Because here's the thing, it's like a Roth IRA where you can put in the difference though is that you're not limited to like $6,000 a year, right? Like you can actually put in almost as much as you want into these kind of plans
Mm-hmm.
within reason. But it grows tax free, comes out tax free, right? And even when you die, it pays you out tax free.
That's right.
But it's got this death benefit, but it's also got this cash value, this savings account that's a part of it, a tax free savings account that's inside of it. This is the part everybody's talking about. They're not talking about the death benefit as much as this. But my friend, he was all about the death benefit and then the cash he'll have down the road. So I bought it. 2 years later, like I said, the recession kicked my butt. I was in the whole 15,000 a month. I couldn't keep paying $1,000 a month into this plan. So even after I put in 25 grand, there was nothing to show for it. So when I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't make that $1,000 a month payment, I lost the policy, right? Just like if you can't make any insurance payment, it's gone. Well, I lost it. Months later, I found out he lied to me. I found out that I could have actually designed it to have cash in there from day one. And having gone through what I went through with the economy, I would have been able to keep it long term,
Mm-hmm.
but I couldn't because of the way he set it up. And I confronted him on it. I actually debated him for 2 hours, showing him my own numbers because I ran my own insurance number to say, here, if we did it this way, this would have been better. And he
Mm-hmm.
finally admitted to me, he said, Chris, the only reason I did it that way is because I could not afford to cut my commissions.
Oh,
That's
dude,
it.
come on.
I
Yeah, when
know.
you said there's a high death benefit, usually death benefits are equivalent to, well, it is a high death benefit, by the way. It's equivalent to that, but it's also equivalent to higher commission for the agent in some cases.
Exactly. The higher the insurance cost, the more the insurance agent makes. Well, really, since really 2008, right? I started like really trying to create my own and revising this over the years to where I've kind of got to an art where nobody does it better, right? Nobody gets the best bang for your buck for the money you put in because what you said, we do the opposite. We lower the death benefit as low as you can possibly get it while keeping it tax free. And so we found just cool little different ways and things we could tweak to make it work in different situations where it's actually really simple and easy. And it becomes really more like a tax-free savings account where instead of taking 15 years before you finally have as much cash as what you paid into it. So if you paid into it for $10,000 a year for 15 years, you finally have 150 grand. Instead, usually by 5 or 6 years, you have as much money as you paid into it.
Yeah.
And so watch out for things out there. Like there's a lot of people out there, even in real estate space, teaching you like dump in a ton of cash up front and pay very little on the back end. The reason they tell you to do that is because the bulk of the insurance costs with whole life is up front. It's the opposite of term insurance. You know how term insurance gets more expensive as you get older? Whole life does the opposite. It's expensive up front, it's front loaded, and then it gets cheaper as time goes on. Well, insurance agents know this. If you dump in a bunch of cash because of those IRS tax limits, they make you get a higher death benefit. I had one friend that's actually in a mastermind group that we're a part of. And the guy told him, he's like, yeah, throw in $750,000 up front and then just pay, a couple $100,000 a year thereafter. After I talked to the guy, I said, no, don't do that. Pay $250,000 up front and just pay $250,000 a year. If you do that, not only will you make a better ROI on your money, but you'll actually save a third of the cost, right? Because you don't have to get triple the death benefit to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the thing is like, it's a great place to store money, especially if you're trying to have that war chest, especially if and more so if you're a real estate investor than ever, we got to have cash on the sidelines. The only problem is like all my friends talk about, even in our mastermind groups, they'll say, yeah, but Chase Bank sucks. Chase Bank's paying me nothing. Even though I have millions with them, they still treat me like I'm a peon, right? And so they're like, where can I store money where I can actually make more than 0.nothing% and not worry about taxes or anything else or lawsuits? Here's where they put it. And so this is where you're seeing more and more real estate investors storing cash, right? To be able to hold it there. But the nice thing is you have this added benefit because there is a lot of cash and because you have minimal costs coming out of it. Not only do you have more liquid cash available to use right away, like from day one, but secondly, the cool thing is when you do use it with investing, you can actually borrow from the insurance company or a bank. You borrow from them. Yes, you pay them interest. You don't pay yourself back interest like they all lie about on social media, right? But you pay them interest. But the cool thing is you're paying back with simple interest while they pay you on that money compounding interest.
Compounding interest, yep.
And if you actually pay at least interest only on those loans and you don't have to pay monthly. By the way, the payments, pay it back, there is no minimum monthly payment. You pay it back however, whenever you want. Your balloon payment is at death, right? And they just take out your death benefit, pay your family the rest, But the nice
which is
thing
basically another loan if you think about it. But
yeah, it's like a low interest loan. I mean, right now they're right around 6%, give or take, right? So low interest loan that you will pay them interest. But if you at least try to keep the interest under control, you don't let it compound against you. The great thing is, say, for example, you have $100,000 in your policy, right? That you have in cash that you could use. You want to borrow 50,000 of that. Well, the cool thing is you still have 100,000 they're paying you tax-free returns on. That's about the same interest rate, right? So you're getting paid compounding interest from them while you pay back on the loan. If you pay back at least the interest only payments at some point, you're paying down the loan or at least keeping it from compounding against you. You start paying less and less in interest while they pay you more and more in interest than what they're charging you. That's how you win. It's not, if you never pay back on the loan, of course the interest is going to accumulate against you and you're kind of a wash at that point. But if you actually pay down the loan with the returns you get from the property, so say you do a fix and flip or something like that, right? If you're doing that, the great thing is, unlike a HELOC, you get a HELOC out, you got to pay it back monthly. Here you don't have to, right? You could pay it back if you wanted to or keep the interest down, but you don't. So you might just say, great, I'm going to use that cash and use it for my property and all the renovations. And then when I sell off the property, I can use that to pay back towards the line of credit. Or I just pay back some interest if I want, and then I let the money go out and reinvest in the next deal if I got the next deal lined up. If you don't,
you're acting as your own bank. That's the way I look at it. They say be your own banker. It really is true. I mean, we have an example. I was just talking to, actually, I just got a text from this attorney. He's putting money into a defined benefit plan. So we have an actuary. I think I told you we have actuaries that we do defined benefit plans. I don't remember the exact number, but let's say he's putting away $200,000 a year. He's in California, by the way, and he's saving, let's just say it's $100,000 in taxes. Basically, what we've put together for him is he puts away whatever amount he saves in tax into a policy. And what he does, he's doing that on an ongoing basis. By the way, it will fluctuate how much he can put in the DB plan. But right off the bat, the government is paying him to get a policy, right? I mean, that's pretty important, number one. And it's just, as you said, it's, again, he's being his own banker, tax-free, in effect, tax-free money. And what he's doing is he's putting money, he's going to be actually now he has pulled money from his policy, and then he's leveraging it 2 to 1. And then he's investing that in income producing real estate. I don't know what his rates are, but let's just say it's bringing in 7%. So think about that, 7%. And the government, in effect, really indirectly, was paying him to do all that because he's getting his defined benefit plan tax deduction and using the tax deduction to fund the policy. Does that make sense?
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's going to grow and grow and grow. Plus, remember, he also has the investments in his defined benefit plan. He does a lot of private equity stuff too. So that's a whole nother argument. Anyway, but it's ballooning and ballooning and ballooning. Obviously, he's a rich man already, but he's getting even richer based on all this scenario. What you were talking about makes, I think, perfect sense in some circumstances, not all, but I think
Right.
in some circumstances it really makes sense.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and that's a key thing too, is that so many people will try to spin it like this is the thing that will make you free, financially free. That's bullcrap. I'll tell you, I've ran the numbers and I run them better than all of those other guys out there. And still, you won't become financially free using this by itself, right?
No, no, no.
And that's the case. That's why you need things like the defined benefit plan. That's why you need things like real estate. That should be your economic engine. That's the real thing,
Yeah.
your business, right? Whatever you're investing in that's generating the income, use that. Get profitable there, like I said in the beginning, but then take those profits and then store them in places like this, right? And be able to do it. And like you said, get tax deductions from defined benefit plans if it makes sense in your situation and things like that.
Mhm.
Like use those to start generating and building that wealth using like real estate, and
Yep.
build that stuff. And it's funny you mentioned like about banks too, because I have two separate people I know on occasions that actually have owned banks. Right, one of them, his grandfather was an owner of a bank and taught him this very same strategy about infinite banking, and
Mm,
so he is a raving fan of it because he's like his grandpa's like this is what you use, like this is what we use. And in fact, I even knew another person that he was talking with someone who owned the bank. His whole family owned the bank, and they don't even store their money in their own bank. It's their
mm.
bank and they won't even store it there. They will put it inside the life insurance instead because there's way more protection,
Yeah.
tax benefits, and everything else. And they can still leverage that, like you said, especially when you're a bank, you can leverage like 10-to-1 ratios, because of this tier one capital, as they call it, right? So
Mhm.
they're able to loan out so much more just by holding money there, So it's not like this is a new thing. This has been something that's been used for
No.
many, many, many years, but it's becoming more mainstream thanks to social media, thanks to YouTube and
Yeah.
things like that. You're starting to see more and more people use it. And again, like I tell people, like the best way I've found to use it as an investor is it's one, a great place to store cash. And then above and beyond like my emergency fund for my business, my personal life and all that stuff, above and beyond it, then it's free game to use to invest too. But I'll tell you lately, especially the market's been going, I'm like, man, there are some amazing deals come down the pipeline. Like I don't mind if I
Yeah.
don't invest all this money. I'm like letting it store. If
Mhm.
I'm investing any money, I'm just using my bank money because I
Yeah.
don't want. I'm not going to lose anything by losing my 0.1%, savings account that I got with my bank at my credit union. And even then, they tax me on that 0.1%, right? Even my high yield savings account maybe pays 4.3%, and I still get taxed on that. It's another stupid tax form I have to deal with at the end of the year. With my life insurance, I don't have to.
You have
And
to
I
worry
can
about
use it as reserves when I get a loan. Like when I go get a mortgage, I haven't sent them bank statements anymore. I just send them my life insurance statement and say, look, I've got cash reserves. They say, check, you got the loan. Thanks.
yeah, people
Like
have
that.
to, that's very true. And by the way, you brought up something. I can't let this fall by the wayside. You brought up the point that you were talking to someone else in a mastermind, and it sounds like he might have had, let's say, incorrect viewpoint on the whole project. If you
Yeah.
think about it, you really have to, and this is for all the listeners and viewers out there, you really have to get illustrations, because if you can compare one illustration to the next, and one looks great, one doesn't look great, or one fits your situation, we'll go with the one that fits your situation. People really don't
Right.
get illustrations which shows the numbers. Some of it's prognosticative in measure, but not normally. It usually will help in a lot of instances.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, and you want to make sure it's good apples to apples too, because
Yeah.
that's a hard thing. You start getting all these numbers, like, well, now what? How do I read this, right? And that's why, like, I always tell people flat out, like, we kind of call it like no BS infinite banking that we do, right? Because it's like, listen, if somebody actually has it better, which is very, very rare, it's like once every few years, I might run into a case where they match us or beat our numbers.
Hmm.
Very rare. And if they beat us, we figure out how they did it, so then they can't beat us again, right?
Yeah, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Because we always, again, we try to minimize those costs as low as we can get it so we maximize the returns. But yeah, it has to be apples to apples, because I had somebody that said, hey, this
You're right.
person actually beat your numbers. Well, then when we looked at it, it says no, they didn't. Like they
Right.
actually broke it. One, they didn't even use the same numbers, and then two, they even had to break it to where it actually would charge you taxes. So it wasn't even tax free. They had to break it that way because they didn't know how to beat my numbers unless they finally just put too much in compared to the death benefit they had set up. So it was a taxable life insurance policy rather than a tax free one that's hidden from creditors and lawsuits and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
Right.
they
So
meched it or something. That's weird.
exactly. That's exactly what they did.
Yeah,
They
they did.
messed
Okay, I gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
So, Chris, by the way, how do we get a hold of you? How does someone get a hold of you if they're interested in infinite banking or any of the other stuff that you do?
Just look up Money Ripples, whether it's moneyripples.com, like you can even book a call to in the infinite banking section there, or
Okay.
any other stuff that we have, or even just on social media. We got our podcast called the Money Ripples Podcast. Social media is all at Money Ripples, so
Okay.
everything's branded Money Ripples.
Money Ripples, and I assume that's MoneyRipples, correct?
That's right. Yep.
All right.
No N. There's an R in there. It's not Money Nipples. It's Money Ripples. Yep.
I didn't even think of that. That was good. Nice joke. This is funny.
It's actually a true story, man. I was actually like interviewing with Entrepreneur Magazine, and
Oh,
so I'm
nice.
super pumped for the interview. I'm like, this is a big time magazine here. And then at the end of the podcast interview they did for the interview, the guy's like, "All right, that's Chris Miles with Money Nipples." I'm like, "No, do not go there. You'll probably find some other group, not me."
Well, hopefully you bought that, so if anyone goes in mistake, by mistake, they go there. All right, so that was funny. All right, so hold on. So you not only do, and I shouldn't throw a curveball I like this, but what else is it that you do? I mean, I love that concept. More of our people who are listening and watching should go, and listen, and maybe listen to you, listen to other people about infinite banking. But what is it else that you do?
Yeah, my belief is that if you do anything in business, you should be the best. And if you're not the best, refer to somebody who is, right? And so we only do two things. We do that, of course, the infinite banking design and setup and everything. We call it max ROI infinite banking. And then two, we also do passive income consulting, which is like one-on-one help, like where people say, "Hey, my financial advisor is just trying to pitch me a bunch of mutual funds and whatnot. Can somebody actually help me in this alternative space? Like, is there a way I create passive income, retire decades sooner than I would if I just did this traditional mutual fund crap that they always try to sell me on," right? Because as I know, as a financial advisor, although we were all good-hearted, still we're salesmen in suits at the end of the day, right? We just offered what we were able to offer based on our licenses. And so we kind of open up that perspective to say, what else could you be doing that could actually help you become what I call work optional, where you work because you want to, not because you have to, and you can do it faster.
So what do you mean? Help me to understand that. I assume real estate, but go into a little bit more detail, because if you can add some value to some of our listeners and viewers out there, I will love you even more than I do right now.
Well, good. I'm not going to do too much lovey here, but
especially because you said Money Nipple on our show.
That's right. No one else will ever say that. Hopefully not. So give you an example. Like I had one guy that he found us through our podcast. He heard me on another podcast like this, on another real estate podcast, and he was trying to figure out what to do because he had $1 million in his retirement plan after he retired from the military.
Okay.
Now he went to his financial advisor, and the financial advisor told him to do exactly what every financial advisor has been trained to do, which was good. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, because financial advisors are now telling people you should only retire on 3% of the money you have. Well, 3% of $1 million is $30,000 a year, right? And they do that because they know that with all the ups and downs, and depending where you put your money, and people are living longer, 4% rule, that thing was debunked like decades ago. The 3% rule is a little bit closer to reality. Dan's thinking, wait, 30,000 a year and I'm a millionaire? That's like a broke millionaire. I'm living below the poverty line in the state of California. That's not good. So when he found us, we said, well, let's look at other options, right? So he went and he bought a couple of duplexes with that, like put some down payments on some duplexes, mortgaged the rest. So he got some better cash flow, bang for his buck. He even did some apartment syndications. He even did some things in the oil and gas space. And the next thing you know, he's making over $100,000 a year income without touching his $1 million. And so that's the difference. Is like, it's really, we're not investment advisors. We don't cross the line saying you should do this or should do that, but we are strategists and connectors. We can say, based on your situation, this might be a better fit. Like, for example, maybe you should be like, I know you deal with like self-directed IRAs. Maybe you should be rolling that money into a self-directed and invest in alternatives. Maybe you should be paying off this debt. Maybe you shouldn't pay off that debt, right? Maybe you should do this to actually save some money on your tax returns, because you're getting beat up by the IRS right now, right? If you're a real estate investor, you should not be getting beat up by the IRS. You probably are showing them like you're a pauper at this point. If you're showing real estate losses, at least, unless you're a wholesaler, that's a different story. But like all that kind of stuff, right? Like, and can we put it in, like, do we lend it? Do we go and do it? I mean, there's even investments like partnerships where I'm in a raw land partnership. I put in $450,000, but it's paying over $11,000 a month, right? Like, so just things that are passive investments. We help you strategize and then connect you with people that actually have a good track record of doing those kind of deals.
No, I see. So you connect with investment groups in that regard.
Yeah, so we don't raise any capital ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not like trying to sell our own, our own syndication or anything like that. Like we're literally just, be able to say, here, based on your situation, your goals, here's some good people you should talk to,
Got
see
it.
which ones feel like a better fit.
Got it. I like that. Very simple. Two things. You don't do a whole bunch of things. We probably do too many things. We do tax, finance, or artificial intelligence, and 1,000 other things. But luckily, we're pretty darn good at all the stuff we do. But two things really: infinite banking and being a broker for passive income for the most part. That sounds like that's you in a nutshell, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. All right. So here, let's get ready to land this plane. So give me one little thing that we have not talked about that can add value to a listener or viewer. And usually, again, solopreneur, entrepreneur, real estate investor, and they want, more dough at the end of the day. And it's totally open to you. Give me some ideas.
Yeah, here's 3 pieces of advice I give you is get lean, get liquid, and get out.
Hmm.
Right? Get lean, get liquid, and get out. So get lean means kind of like I said at the beginning of the show, get profitable, right? Like make sure that you're being a wise steward. There is no doubt that there's things coming out in the media finally saying, hey, our economy is not as strong as we thought it was, right? I mean, stock market had been booming, Bitcoin had been booming, everything's been going crazy. Now all of a sudden, reality is starting to set in. Basically, the bigger the party, the bigger the hangover, right? And we're just starting to realize that the party's ending and the hangover, the headaches are starting to kick in. So that's what we're starting to see right now. And so we got to make sure that we're prepared for that. So make sure that you are getting lean in your business. Get lean at home. Like don't just blow all your cash. Like make sure you're starting to keep that cash, but don't just lock it away forever, right? Don't lock it in places where you can't touch it. For example, like a lot of times people are told to lock all their money by paying off their house. Well, I did that in the last recession back in 2007. Well, when I tried to get a cash out refinance, they said, sorry, we don't like you because you're a business owner. We will not give you any lending.
Yep.
And so I had all this equity trapped in the property. And because that was tightening the credit market, my values came down, all my equity disappeared. I would have been better off keep that money in cash in my pocket. And that's what I mean by being liquid. That's why infinite banking is a great strategy, because at least you can store it somewhere where you're making tax-free, decent returns of at least 5 or 6% a year, right? And then get it out, right? Once you have that money liquid, then it's get it out. How do I get it out to actually start generating passive income for myself so that I do get myself to that place where I'm work optional. I work because I want to, not because I have to.
Look at you. I like that. And by the way, can you do business all over the state, all over the country?
I can. Yep.
A mini in every state. And for say someone's a investor in Washington, you can work with them, and they can do investment. What am I doing? I don't know what's going on with my talking today. Infinite investing in, let's say, Florida as an example.
Yeah, we're licensed in all the states when it comes to infinite banking, even coaching people. We get a lot of people from the West Coast, get a lot of people from Texas and Florida. Pretty much where there's Republicans, we got fans for sure. It seems like, but the funny thing is, we even got a lot of people in California that aren't Republicans. So who knows? So people where there's money, Jersey, we get a lot of people. Here's the funny thing: we get a lot of people from Minnesota. I don't know why. I mean, it's because my mom was born in Minnesota. I don't know, or she moved to Minnesota. She was a kid, but I don't know. But whatever reason, there's a lot of people from Minnesota that find us too.
All right, so rest assured, you guys can help. It sounds like pretty much anyone, and you will work with anyone. Do you have any minimums, by the way?
For infinite banking, I recommend don't do that strategy unless you have at least 5 to 10,000 a year that you could start saving, each year. And then on the passive income side, when people will say, how much money should I have before I start investing? I would wait till you have at least 150,000, give or take. Once you have that much, then you can diversify and do more things. Where if you only have like 50,000 bucks, there's not a lot you can do, and you might be too heavy into one deal that could may or may not work out for you.
Got it. All right, you've added some value in just a short 28 minutes that we've talked. I really appreciate you spending the time, man. It's I believe in, we again should be talking a little bit more about infinite banking because I think it's the way to go. I know you and I see eye to eye on real estate, passive income. I think it's the way to go. I think that more people need to hear the story of both, and I like what you're talking about.
I love it, man.
All right, cool. Hey, everyone, thank you so much. Once again, this is Kenneth French of VastSolutionsGroup.com. We're here to help you. You're listening to the Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Once again, Chris, thanks.
Thanks, Kenner.